Good day, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'm glad to see you and welcome you in Moscow, the representatives of the leading companies, major entrepreneurs, investors. Despite the fact that the forum is quite young, this forum, organized on the initiative of VTB Bank, has become a considerable event of economic life of Russia and in the international business event calendar. It is a good platform for direct discussions of multifaceted economic development issues, to elaborate new approaches to implement investment policy. The motto of the forum, Russia Calling, reflects the nature of our policy of openness, partnership. We want to invest capital in Russia, work in Russia, create new production capability, want to make it all very beneficial. We believe it's got to add up to the competitiveness of our country and the efficiency of all the state and economic institutions. The main thing is what should be done first to make Russia the magnet for foreign and domestic capital. What should be done in order to give Russia the necessary resources to modernize its economy? They've got the considerable groundwork for stable and sustainable development. We're among global leaders in terms of key macroeconomic metrics. The public debt is around 10% to GDP only, and our debt to foreign investors is like 2.5% of GDP. Foreign exchange reserves reached $522 billion by the end of September. The inflation is below 7%, and last year we named the figure was 6.1, which is the lowest indicator in the last 20 years. And we are planning to reduce inflation by below 5% by 2014. Inflation targeting is one of our priorities. Even at a time of global crisis, we did not impede the free flow of capital, although we had the temptation, and some experts advised us to introduce some limitations to protect ourselves, but we did not do so because we believe tactical gains would be small and would have strategic losses, and we just pulled ourselves together and tightened the belt. And as a result of that, in 2009 to 2011, we had the inflow investment of 3% to GDP, which is above the global average level. In Europe, in Brazil, in China, in India, the indicator for the same period did not surpass 2% to GDP. The main sources of investment inflow in Russia, apart from the traditional offshore areas, were Germany, France, Netherlands, and Sweden. And we all understand that the Netherlands, is a transit zone of our capitals, as well as Cyprus, but which is not bad at all. Today, despite the slowdown in the neighboring adjacent regions, our economy keeps growing. According to the Ministry of Economic Development of Russia, GDP increased by 4% for the first 8 months of this year, and experts believe that pace will be preserved in the upcoming 3 years, which is below the indicators we had prior to the crisis. But this growth is much more sustainable and of a better quality, and we've got growth, which is good in the current context. I would like to emphasize that the growth is not based on the increase in oil and gas prices and the increase in external foreign debt by banks and corporations. This growth is devoid of any commodity-based revenues or debt bubbles. But I will not be evasive. I will say that the commodity market is a positive influence to Russian economy, but it is not growing dramatically. It's more or less even. well, and we're also taking into account serious risks observed globally. We are concerned by the fact that the economies of some European countries and the EU are major economic partner. 50% of our trade falls on the European Union. So in some European countries, we can see the obvious recession. The production output growth is on the fall in China as well. It's on the wane. In a number of states, social tensions are growing, which is bad and has an impact, a negative impact on their economy. We, of course, hope that the measures taken by our partners will help enhance things, and for our part, we will try to safeguard ourselves against all negative scenarios in European and global economy while drafting the 2013 budget and the budget till 2015. First of all, we applied the so-called budget rule. We started elaborating it like a couple of years ago, and the main parameters of the rule were ready by the end of last year. Now the government has put it into language and approved. It means that the dependence of Russian budget on global oil price must be decreasing, which is to be a long-lasting sustainable turn. The non-oil and gas deficit in the upcoming years will fall from 10.5% of GDP in 2012 to 8.5% in 2015. And this budget rule, I must say, is a necessity for us because the revenues we get from oil and gas will invariably be falling in future, and we must take it into account while drafting budgets. If serious changes in the global context are witnessed, we have foreseen some safeguarding measures, including the redistribution of budget appropriations, including recapitalization of our banking system to the tune of up to 150 billion rubles, only if need be. And if crisis strikes us, but if need be, this may be done by exchanging federal loan bonds to the securities of banking credit institutions. And several important and strategic industries, companies may get additional state guarantees. Altogether, these measures will help stabilize economy, whatever the scenario is. But the main guarantee of our stability is, as we believe, the pursuing the policy of economic growth and instigating economic activity, trade and investment. I must note one very important development of this year, Russia's accession to the WTO. For us, the participation of Russia is one of the key priorities of ours. We hope that this step will have a positive influence on the moods of investors and will pave the way for long-term projects. We always assume that acceding to the WTO would make our economy and the rules of its functioning more transparent and clear for all the countries and investors. In the upcoming years, we want to accede also to OECD. Ladies and gentlemen, today's positive dynamics and pace of Russian economy, the accumulated strength and the reserves we've got enable us to set forth new ambitious goals, and we understand that there are no off-the-shelf and simple solutions. Like 3 to 4 years ago, the world was in illusions that global problems could be sorted out quite quickly, but now everybody understands and everybody says it out loud that we need to apply new innovative approaches. We need a lot of time to recover. To finally recover, we need to drastically change the model of the economic development. Such changes will impact all the economies, and there is no use clinging to old recipes which will just preserve the crisis context. We need to incentivize changes, find new modern sources of growth. We can understand that this requirement relates directly to our economic policy. Against the backdrop of global changes, including in the energy sector. We should be quite swift in diversifying of our economy and proceed with technological renewal. And we should move to the new technological standards. The growth of at the expense of previously created capacity has been exhausted, which is proved by the very low level of unemployment, the lowest in the last 20 years. Although we believe it's an achievement, socially and economically, it is also an indicator that we are not able to carry on basing on the old model and pattern of development. And the unemployment rate is now standing at 5.2%, which is one of the lowest indicators globally. And future growth is possible only with the help of investment. We should also invest in human capital, human resources. We've got the task to create or renew at least 25 million jobs by 2020, and this is the initiatives sponsored by one of the entrepreneurs groups, and I believe it's a right and well thought over initiative. At first sight, it looks like a very complicated task, but all our experts made calculations and came to the conclusion that it is possible to reach such a figure, not only by creating new jobs, brand new jobs, but by restructuring and renewing the existing ones. And as a result of such policies, we will be able to receive 25 million new better jobs and better paid jobs. By 2018, we expect to increase the labor productivity by 50% and the share of high-tech and science-intensive sectors in GDP by 30%. In 2015, the growth of investment volume is to increase by 25%, and by 2018 to 27%. And we've been actively working to this end. Together with the business community, we are preparing road maps to enhance business climate in specific areas, and we will jointly control their implementation. The regions play the central part in improving the business climate and attracting investment. Prior to the crisis, we witnessed a good competition sound competition among regions to attract investors, and the leaders were able to drastically change the structure of the economy. Last year, the Strategic Initiatives Agency, together with business community, started a new pilot project. It's about introduction of new standards of work of local and regional authorities aimed at enhancing investment climate. Best practices of dealing with investors must become the norm for all the administrations. I would like to invite investors to cooperate with the regions and the SIA and to elaborate new approaches together. Russia is open for foreign and domestic direct investments in industry, services, agriculture, innovation sector, and we hope that together with the capital inflow, we'll get an inflow and advent of technology and management expertise in modern patterns and models of production, new networks of distribution, all that our international partners possess. The priority of ours is to develop infrastructure of national financial market to provide a better resiliency to it and establish a international financial center in Moscow and shape new tools of investment to let our companies raise capital faster and better and quicker using domestic and international sources. By this November, the central depository must be in place. It's aimed at ensuring access to domestic financial market to foreign investors and make the system more transparent with enactment of law on clearing activities and on bidding procedures. We've got all the conditions to develop infrastructure of financial markets. The stock exchange, the stock markets and the central counterparty, they will work together by international standards. On our agenda, we've got the issue of cancelling upfront payment for securities and international practice paying several days later for those securities is a well-established practice, and we also want to introduce this new system replacing the upfront payment that we currently have, and I hope that we will take into account all the advantages and drawbacks of the systems and adjust it to our context and avoid any new bubbles. Such innovations reduce the cost of capital for Russian companies and economy, and the capacity of the financial market domestically is to grow. We want to merge MISEX and RTS stock exchanges to have in future a uniform, competitive, world-class trading platform where value of Russian assets and resources will be decided. Let me note that some issues of enhancing this sphere are now worked upon by the working group on the financial center establishment in Moscow, and we are preparing a new, renewed roadmap. Hope it's got to be approved by the end of the year. We also have the Russian Direct Investment Fund aiming at diversifying our economy and investment flows. We will provide additional funding each year to the tune of 62 billion rubles. It was last year's figure of additional funding, and this year we will also provide 62. Yes, am I right, Mr. Siluanov? Yes. Oh, I cannot hear him. We will, yes, Mr. Minister. And we will try to foresee this funding for next year's budget. In 2013, we don't have this money so far, but we will try to make our budget not only socially oriented, but to foresee development of our economy, and we need such instruments as direct investments fund, which is one of the most helpful tools proved to be efficient worldwide. When it was shaped in 2011, and starting since then, 7.7 billion rubles has been allocated, and the co-investment it raised surpassed 25 billion rubles. A serious step forward has become the shaping of a consortium of this fund and international funds. Nearly all the major international funds are present in that consortium. It has started investing into Russian companies that are going to place their securities on the merged MISEX RTS stock exchange. We are to incentivize our domestic investors and overcome the long-term money deficit, which is a concern for everybody at present. Our financial system doesn't have at hand the necessary financial resources that are needed to make our economy advance. But this is not a matter of economy only. If we solve it, we will get better trust of our people in financial institutions and capability for better and much more projects. So, and the cumulative component of our pensions is one of the parts and reserves for investment, and when we established this pension system, we were quite wise. We accumulated, like this year it's got to be around 2 trillion rubles of funds, and the previous finance minister and the current one promised us that part of this means will be allocated for infrastructure development by issuing infrastructural bonds with the collateral of this fund, pension fund. I hope to see specific proposals by the end of the year. And globally, such funding is given by major players in the stock market. Those are insurance companies and pension funds, etc. Now we are discussing the issue of establishing so-called MEGA regulator. This is one more problem I'd like to dwell upon. Well, the government suggests merging federal stock market service and central bank. Federal Financial Market Service and Central Bank to create a mega regulator. The idea is debated by very many stakeholders, and I suggest we should make a decision on that very quickly, because the improvement of the regulation system is a necessity and we must not procrastinate. So far, our citizens don't have enough degree of awareness as regards the potential of the financial market, and as a result of this, they invest in the only thing that they can trust: real estate or foreign currency, or probably set money aside in the money box of theirs. So we will do our best to increase the financial literacy and improve it, and provide better confidence of our citizens and nationals to the financial market, and provide new tools that will be inflation-proof. The topical task for us is to enhance the level of corporate governance in enterprises, which would be an additional bonus for most of them. So far, in very many like public companies, the level of management is below the best international practices. So the government has been entrusted with the task to set the criteria for the efficiency of publicly owned companies' management, using best practices and expertise, and the state will go on with the privatization of its assets, but will by using the well-conceived, well-thought-over approach, and the rules will be quite transparent and open. The assets will be sold at fair market values to the best and most efficient owners, taking into account the economic context. The privatization plan has been approved, and eventually we are to sell shares in most non-commodity companies. The exception is the natural monopolies and the military industrial sector companies, where state will preserve its share as a controlling share owner. And our banks rank top among Russian blue chips. Like in February 2010, a 10% stake of VTB Bank was privatized. It was to the tune of $3.3 billion. In September this year, 7.6% share in Sberbank became private, with the tune of 5.2 billion United States dollars. As far as I can remember, like per $100 invested 10 years ago, they received the profit of 700. Can you remember, Andrei? Well, quite a lot, yeah. It was one of the best transactions in the last 10 years. Well, and the demand was quite good given the market condition of today, and at a rather high price, which proves that the Russian financial institutions are still attractive even in the global context of financial crisis. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a truth universally acknowledged that capital flows to places where risk-to-return ratio is believed optimal by investors. And Russian and global economy today need confidence, and to win that confidence, the confidence of investors, is to provide open new horizons of development. This is our goal. We hope that Russian and foreign investors will appreciate and value highly the achievements of our economy, and will focus on long-term and large-scale investment cooperation. We're open for this cooperation. By way of conclusion, I'd like to thank the organizers of Forum, VTB Bank, for maintaining this tradition of carrying out this very important event, and a very instrumental event in the capital of Russia, in Moscow. I thank you for your attention.